Welcome to another episode of The Grass is Greener. Today my guest is Richard Pauwells, and Kismet. Rich is the founder of Rich's Nuts, and he's got quite this story. He was a firefighter in California in long shifts hauling heavy equipment up hills. Would leave him beat, so he needed energy, and he discovered the power of sprouting nuts. And he sprouted cashews, dehydrated them for crunch, added herbs from his garden, and shared this creation with the crew. When he could barely keep up with the demand in the firehouse, he knew the perfect snack was born. So Rich, these nuts are easy to digest. They're crunchy, organic, and super delicious. And he now is really growing this company in a cool way. So when we did this interview, it was right after his dad had passed. And we each had a recording device, and my recording has gone missing. So the interview still works really well. You'll still hear me, and you'll still hear him especially well, which is good because it's more about what he has to say. But so really open your heart. There's a lot to this conversation. If you're willing to listen and be open, there's some. The nuts are the tiniest bit. I just want to share just a little bit about him. And this company, but Rich has been my friend for 15 years, and he's introduced me to so many cool things, including Wim Hof. We actually brought Wim to Los Angeles and used my bathtub and did my first breath work with Wim and ice bath with Rich and a really core group. And he's always been the one that would take us on adventures, so canoeing, Burning Man, I mean, you name it, camping. He wanted to take me elk hunting and to crazy, always getting us out into nature and into community. And Rich is a connector and just a really special friend of mine. But I wanted to just share a little bit about his nut company at the beginning here, and then you'll hear throughout the conversation just his beginning, which is a very, very humble, wild beginning. So I love this guy. He's been a big influence in my life, and he has brought many gifts my way. And my hope and my prayers that this podcast is a little bit of a gift towards you as well. So we're walking. Austin was just a few months old, strapped to my stomach, and you can hear him chirping as we're by the waves. And I wanted to do it while we walk, because for me, quite often I find that when my body's still, my mind is busy, and when my body's busy, my mind is still. So I think maybe I'm a better listener when I'm walking. And for men, walking side by side, or dads with boys, it's really important. It's much more, it's less intense and less of a challenge if you go shoulder to shoulder. So dads, if you're listening and you have a conversation with your kids, just sit down and go for a drive or go for a hike, or you don't need to grab them and say, look me in the eyes, because that doesn't necessarily work from men to men. So walking side by side another guy is a great way to open and to communicate shoulder to shoulder in that way. So please enjoy this. Please subscribe, share, and all that fun stuff. And enjoy meeting Rich Pauwells, my beloved brother. And we'll see you on the other side. The grass is greener with Greene, because my good buddy Richard Pauwells is visiting from Puerto Rico, and we're going for a little walk. We were going to get up super early this morning and do it on the roof and do a little sun gazing, but it just didn't quite work out with the overcast and a few other things. Now I have Austin strapped to my chest, and we're just going to do a little beach walk, and I just wanted to check in with Rich about a few things. So Rich is an entrepreneur and a really special human in my life. We met, what would you say, 15 years ago? No, 12 years ago? Through some mutual friends. And Rich is responsible for many, many, many adventures, bringing us out of our comfort zone into canoe trips and Burning Man and
whitewater rafting.
Whitewater rafting, and taking my son bow and arrow shooting, and inviting me many times to go freeze my butt off in a tent while hunting an elk. And Rich,
that's still on the table.
It's still on the table. I know. And Rich, this is what kind of friend Rich is. He's like, I'm going to go do Wim Hof's retreat for my birthday. Do you want to come? And everything in me just goes, I know what kind of agony that is. But so Rich Pauwells is one of my dear friends, and he's visiting LA. And I wanted to take this moment to talk about a few things with Rich. Rich's father has just transitioned, and Rich came back to be with his family, and we had a mini ceremony at our house last night for his dad. And I also lost my father. Not lost, I know where he is. I also had the privilege of spending 43 years with my dad on this planet. And so I just wanted to check in with Rich on this walk along the beach about a few things. Rich also has some really cool practices that we've kind of introduced each other to. And Rich has a nut company that's really special in doing really cool things. Rich is into regenerative farming and iguanas, and he brought an iguana here to my fridge as a gift because they have a massive population overgrowth in Puerto Rico. But what I'd love to start with, Rich, is your very beginning. I mean, where you were born.
My very beginning.
Because this story, I love to start at the beginning with people, but just a little bit about your parents, and you can share as much or as little as you want about that, and then we'll just kind of take it from there. But before we start, I'm just really grateful for our friendship and for all you've taught me and just the gift. I'm so honored to be able to support you and have you in our home during this little week of you being in LA and dealing with stuff with your family, and it's a privilege to be your friend, pal.
Thank you so much, Paul. And I would definitely say that the feeling is very much mutual. I've learned so much from you and come so far, and your influence in my life is incredible and so highly beneficial. So I would say that feeling of learning and sharing is very mutual. And I really love that there's a few of us that are so close and so tight that it feels like whenever we're together, we create like a sacred space, and we start to treat each other and the planet and all those around us with that energy that everywhere is sacred space. I think it's really empowering for us. And what I would say about my humble beginnings,
because we were gathered around last night with a really small group, and when you began to share where you were born, I had forgotten, and so it's such. If you're willing to share that, I'd love you to share that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was born in prison. My parents were heroin addicts, and so I was born in jail. 1973 at the Chino Correction Facility for Women. Basically, how that started was my parents, to support their heroin habit, they started to sell heroin so they could pay for their own deal, and basically they got busted, and they said the only reason I even exist is because they got busted. So they were released on bail. That was the only time they really cleaned up, because they had gotten thrown in jail. And so during that period when they were going through the court case, they were out of jail, they were on bail, they had 3 months of clean time, and that's when I was conceived. And then they subsequently got convicted of their crimes, and they went to jail. So I ended up being born in the Chino Correctional Facility for Women in California.
And then from there, you were raised by your grandma a little bit, right? And some other aunts and family.
That's right, yeah. So I spent about 3 months with my mother before they took me out of the prison and released me to my grandmother's sister, who was actually a already approved foster agent. So basically my grandma took over at 3 months, and I spent a lot of time with her until my birth mother was released. So yeah, it was, I don't obviously remember it, but
right.
That was my birth.
Now, have you thought much about how that experience has affected you? you're in your 40s and you've been a fireman for a big chunk of your life, and you're a cheerleader in college. I always forget that too.
Yeah.
But have you thought, like you shared with us last night, some of your early memories with your dad fishing, but have you ever thought of the impact of being born into captivity, and you're such a free, wild soul? Like Rich always takes us on every adventure that you could imagine, is calling us out to nature. So how do you go from being born technically in a cage to being this guy who's always barefoot, always sun gazing for sunrise and sunset? How does that happen? Like, have you ever thought of that effect? Like what?
Yeah, I've often thought about that and contemplating it. It's really difficult to articulate because it's really hard to figure out what happened at such an early stage in development, right? There's a lot of different ideas around that, and I have explored it some, and I think part of the reason why I am so into nature is as like an opposition to being born in a cage, like it's about freedom, and I really feel like this journey for me, this whole path, like has been a get out of your cage. We all build our own mental constructs that keep us restrained, that limit us, that tell us who we are, and they're based on our familial patterning, they're based on society, they're based on stuff we learned in school from other kids that don't know what's going on. So like we put all these patterns on ourselves, and then they shape and inform who we are as we move into our future. So like, how do we break free from that? How do we get out of that cage? So I think someday I want to write a book about that, like get out of your cage.
Right. I think you would be a perfect guy to write that book. It's like you have this spirit of adventure and curiosity, and I think you were sharing last night that your dad had a similar curiosity.
Yeah.
And like you and your dad didn't have always the best relationship, right? Like there was times when it was a little bit up and down with your dad.
Yeah. The thing with my father was he was kind of a difficult man. I mean, he was very smart, and he was super challenging. His communication skills and his emotional intelligence were not high. His intellect was high, but he was just, he had a lot of trauma in his childhood. He had a very rough life, and I think that affected who he became. But the one thing that he always told me, and the one thing I always know, is that he loved me. So I had that unconditional father's love. So that was foundational to who I am now. Without that knowing, like on a deep level, that he's got you no matter what, I think things would have been different. But
and you said he never made you necessarily feel like a little kid, huh?
No, he never treated me like a kid. He always treated me like a young man, and he would be, we'd go camping or something. It's freezing cold. I'm 5 years old, and we're waking up before the sun is up. It's pitch black and it's freezing cold, and he's like, put your boots on. And I'm like, they're freezing. I don't want to get out of my pillow. And he'd be like, come on, do it. Let's go. No one's going to do it for you. And he would just gently nudge me and push me, and there was no whining, no excuses, no victim mentality. It's like, if you want something, do it. You can do anything you want. Believe in yourself. And he always ingrained that in me from a very young age.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so how was it going from being raised by your grandmother into like, how was your early school? Like, do you remember like what part, how was it going to middle school and elementary school and high school? Was it difficult for you? Were you a good student? Because like, I know you got into sports in high school, but like, how was it? Because you were technically raised in the foster system, or did your dad took you back?
He got out and he took me back, and he always was fond of saying that I saved him, because he cleaned up his act, he kicked heroin, he got a job, he became a plumber, and he worked for LA County Plumbing, and he cleaned up his act. But let's see, what was I gonna say there?
Well, with school, like from...
Oh, school, yes. This is it.
Right.
So with school, it was great. What happened with school, I was super smart, and I knew how to read and write when I got into kindergarten. And so when I got into kindergarten...
Wait, why?
Because my dad used to buy me all these little like books. They were kind of like learn how to do math and learn how to write and such and read. And they're like kind of like coloring books, you know, for like kindergartners. It was really funny. He used to give me all those books, and I figured it out. And by the time I got into kindergarten, I could already read and write and like do simple math. So they immediately moved me up to the first grade. And when I got into the first grade, I was bullied every day. Like the kids used to make fun of me because they would sing this song to me, which was, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it was a kid's song. It would say, "Kindergarten baby, born in the Navy." And I would get so upset and mad because they were teasing me and laughing at me.
But you weren't born in the Navy.
I know.
And you weren't a kindergarten baby. You were a grade oneer. Like, you were actually older than them.
Well, no, they moved me up.
Oh, so the grade oneers were making fun of you.
Yeah, when I got to grade 1.
Oh.
And so I would get in a fight like every week because I would just lash out. Yeah, I would lash out with my fists.
Okay.
And so I would just, you know, punch the bully in the mouth. And so I was fighting the whole time. And then they decided to hold me back because I had quote unquote social problems, you know, because I was getting bullied and I didn't take the bullying. So, so what I learned from that at that very young, tender age was to dim my light, to hide my intelligence. So from that point forward, I didn't really put a lot of effort into academics. I didn't do my homework, but I would always ace all the tests. So I would get like decent grades, enough so that I could play sports. I wrestled and played football in high school, but I never put any effort into any homework because I was like, this intelligence just gets me bullied and I have negative repercussions. So it took me a long time to unlearn that, for sure.
Wow, that would be a big thing to overcome. Like, your intelligence gets you in trouble.
Yeah.
So let's dumb it down a little bit.
So I was hiding. I've been hiding my whole life. You know.
So how do you go from, you said you played football, but how do you go from playing football to being the cheer? Because you got into cheer at a certain point too, right? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was crazy. So, I played football and I wrestled in high school, and then I went to junior college for a couple years where I wrestled, and then I transferred to UCLA, and I was working out in the gym, and I was pretty physically fit back then, maybe 30, 40 pounds heavier.
You're physically fit right now. We'll add a picture.
Yeah. No, I'm fit now, but then I was really bulky and heavy, maybe like 215 pounds or something like that. And I was working out in the gym, and these cute cheerleader girls came over and recruited my friend Dan and I to go try cheerleading. And we're like,
they were cute, you were like, all right.
Basically, I mean, I was like 20, and these cute girls like, "Hey, you want to come throw us up in the air?" We're like, "Sure, let's try it."
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and it turned out to be so great because I went to UCLA, and it was so hard to get classes there, and I got priority registration. I got to travel with the team. We got to work out in the athletes' gym. So it was really amazing, and it was a great experience learning how to communicate with the feminine, especially in athletic competition. Because I'd always been with men on the football team, and you'd be like, "Dude, you missed your block," and you could just talk all like men talk to each other, especially when they're...
I never thought of being a male cheerleader as beginning to understand like the dance of masculine and feminine, and you're holding
The trust factor. You're literally holding their life in your hands.
Yeah, and you're holding that container for them then to be more feminine. That's so cool.
It's part of the reason I think where women started to feel really safe around me.
Yeah.
They understand that I'm in integrity and I'm there to protect them, and that's exactly what was happening with cheerleading. Like literally their life were in my hand, you know.
And then how do you get from cheerleading to firefighting? Because firefighting was a huge chapter of your life. Like, and feel free to fill in if I'm jumping too quick from chapters here, because there's a lot of details within these, but for the sake of time, and we're going to possibly try to get back to the 100 breath class.
Yeah.
And this little guy, to lay him down, he's asleep already.
Yeah. Well, so interesting. You did forget one thing. So I did, interestingly enough, become a kindergarten baby that went into the Navy. So I joined the Navy Reserve to pay my way through college. Because again,
you were in the Navy Reserves.
I was in the Navy Reserves,
so those grade oneers were bullying you, actually helped you out.
Yeah. Eventually, I was a fireman in the Navy, and I was already thinking about possibly becoming a firefighter. In college, I took a bunch of fire science courses at the junior college, and then, you know, I became a firefighter in 1998, and that was a huge chapter. You're right, in my life. What I really liked about the fire department was for me, the physical part was not that hard, and I think it is really difficult for some people. And I think this set me up really well, the way that I was like born in jail, and I felt like I had a level of emotional detachment because I didn't really have like a solid mother figure. So that made me a great firefighter.
You didn't grow up with your mom at all?
I never really knew my mom, no. She kept dabbling with heroin and basically was no longer in my life because she couldn't really kick her habit. And then that was a whole healing process around that too. It was like, I didn't realize this, but there was a layer of anger in me that was like resentful that, my mother couldn't give up her habit for the love of her son. My father was able to do it, but my mother wasn't. And so I had to deal with that anger and frustration, resentment that I needed to allow to process me. Up until I was in my mid-20s, I didn't even think it had affected me in any way, but how could it not, right? It's the most profound relationship.
Of course.
But I think that level of detachment really helped me be a great firefighter, because one of the things that happens in the fire department is you're in life and death situations all the time. If you get emotionally involved or engaged, then you start to, you're not showing up at your best. You're not doing your best job. You're like, become part of the problem. And I was really good at keeping that separation between, oh wow, this is, my baby dying. Literally, I've had people handing me their baby that's dying, and we're resuscitating him and bringing him back to life and stuff. And so to hold your exact perfect like level of tranquility where you're getting things done, you're super focused, and you're not letting the stress like overwhelm you, like that skill I think comes from that level of detachment from being born in jail and not really having a mother.
Interesting. I love that. You're turning your adversity into your power. Like many people could take a past experience like that and have excuses their whole lives to perform in a different way that maybe wouldn't be of service. And that it's so interesting. There's so many people that
it's like the victim mindset, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
someone else's fault.
Why do you think you were able to turn your story, which many people would use as an excuse and be a victim, and they could tell that story their whole lives? What's the secret sauce in your life that allowed you to have it turn you into this high performance kind of machine of a human being who is fireman, went in the Navy, and now has this really abundant, amazing company and a very beautiful relationship to your wife, Samantha? So what is it? What is that? Have you thought of this? Like, why were you able to turn your pain into your power rather than have it turn you into a disaster pants?
Yeah, I have thought about it quite a bit.
What do you think it is?
And I've done a lot of work to get to where I am,
Yeah.
It's a combination of things, but the most important thing is the mindset. Like, things come at you that are going to be stressful and challenging. And what do you do with that? That's where you have the opportunity to choose what you want to do with it. So for me, I never saw myself as a victim. I don't feel like I had a bad childhood or a difficult childhood. I mean, I had a lot of love from a lot of people.
Fishing, your dad took you guys fishing? And
my dad would take us fishing. I had lots of feminine love from my grandmother and her sister and cousins. And the cheerleaders. But really, what was the most, I think, crucial part was really my mindset that I'm not a victim and that I can do anything. And having that confidence and belief in myself, which I think I got from my father, just like constantly not babying me, not allowing me to whine or to back out of stuff. Like, okay, you want to play baseball? We're going to play baseball for a season. I didn't really like it. I wanted to quit. He's like, well, you have to play through the whole season, and then we'll try a different sport. And so then we tried football the next year, and I loved football and I hated baseball, so I played football. So it's like he didn't ever let me back out of my commitments. He made me, even as a 5-year-old, he held me to a standard, to an accountability standard. And that was a really beautiful thing before he passed. He had a long time illness, so I had a lot of time with him at the end where I would have these really deep conversations, and we had this moment where, it's always, do you feel like you meet up to your father's expectations? And the conversation I had with him, he said that I exceeded them by like 20 times. So it felt really good to hear that. And he was really proud of me, you know, because I had gone so far and done so much compared to where he, you know, envisioned for me. So that was really powerful and super healing for both of us.
But then, like, along the way, so your dad, you know, even though it was a rough start, you still never doubted his love.
I never doubted his love, no.
And sounds like your dad never. So he was a big part of the secret sauce of what's made you, you know, who you are. And here we are celebrating.
Right to exist, right? That fundamental right to exist. And to go for your dreams and to do what you want and travel the world and become a fireman and do all these incredible things that, like, he never would have expected for me.
Right.
And I think that right to exist and following my own curiosity, he always told me to just, like, follow my interests. Like, don't do things that bore you. What's the point? Like, follow your interests. And if you don't like this sport, let's try a different one. But give it a good, solid try and then move to the next thing.
So talk to me about the fireman transition then from Navy Reserves and college, UCLA, to get then to, like, what? I know you said you took some courses in college, but then you were here in, like, Malibu and Topanga and Los Angeles, which is a pretty, and like that PCH can be a pretty gnarly. That must have been quite a baptism of fire of experiences.
Yeah, the fire experience was great for me. It continued to build on that confidence. It provided so many opportunities for me to learn, to grow, to expand myself. And so in 1998, I went into the fire academy. I became a firefighter for Los Angeles County Fire Department. I worked there for 20 years. I did the busiest, craziest, most intense time was when I worked in Inglewood at Fire Station 173. Oh, wow. And we would have lots of shootings and be up all night and fight a lot of fires. And it was hardcore and it was awesome and I loved it. And it came very naturally to me because I'm always there to help people. And now I just have a team with me and I have a lot of training and I have all the right equipment. So it was really, really great and powerful for me.
What's the wildest thing that you experienced as a firefighter in Los Angeles?
Well, you know, people always go, what's the scariest situation you're in? You know, and I would say the craziest one for me personally, I was in a fire in Inglewood and it was an abandoned home. So there was like plywood on the windows and the door, and the thing was just ripping fire, and it was a, you know, header a half a mile high. It was huge. And so I was on the nozzle, and so we went in and tore the plywood off, and it was super smoky, and the heat was like really down on the floor. So I crawled in with my buddy Carlos, and it was so hot. He's like, pencil the ceiling, which is a technique we would use to cool off the fire and take a lot of the heat out of it, where we make a figure of 8 with a hose line on the roof. It works great when the place is ventilated, because then when the water converts to steam, it expands like 1,700 times. And so instead of pushing all this heat out, it pushed it right down on us. So we just basically steamed ourselves, and it got like 500 degrees hotter in like, I don't know, 30 seconds. So he's like, do it again. He panicked. And I hit it again, and it got worse. He's like, let's get out of here. So we backed out, and, you know, the place was a total loss. But I thought it burned my ears. When I came out, my mask was crystallized, which means that hit like 580 degrees, I think was the number. If it goes more than that, I think at like 600, the mask melts, and then you basically die because the smoke comes in, the heat and everything. So it was like a 20-degree difference between life and death. So that was pretty intense. I would say that was my most scary, intense moment with the fire department.
Yeah. And you had some saving some babies and some early stroke. You were able to call someone. They're like, I think you're having a stroke, and you were right on a couple of those, right?
Yeah. As a paramedic, actually, I kept track of the people that I brought back from clinically dead, and it was 7. So
7
people that were dead that I brought back to life. Now they I don't know how long they all lived afterward. You know, some of them might have passed very quickly after. I don't have the follow-up stats on that, but for a long time I thought, man, I'm not a great paramedic. I only brought like 6 people back from the dead. And someone's like, what are you talking about? It's like 0.02% chance that someone comes back from the dead.
Exactly. So were any of them like, oh, you should have left me? I was in a much better place. Did anybody say that? Like
Nobody
the Zach
complained.
Bush conversation?
No, I didn't have anyone complain about it.
No?
No.
Remember Zach Bush said he brought a few people back on the shift as an MD, and he said all three of them were like, why did you bring me back?
Oh, that's funny. No, I didn't have that.
No.
I mean, usually our care is till we get them to the hospital, and then we never see people again unless we reach out to them, or sometimes they reach out to us on occasion.
Right?
So oftentimes we don't know what the final outcome is, you know?
Yeah. And so it was 20 years in the fire department, and then you had a little bit of an injury, right, with your knee?
Yeah.
And then that actually started your... And share how you brought the nuts into the fire department and how that transition began to happen for you, because Rich owns a really amazing, successful company called Rich Nuts. And just tell us the humble beginnings of you bringing nuts to the men in the fire department.
Yeah, that's a crazy story too. So basically, I after Inglewood, I went to Malibu, and I spent my last 12 years in Malibu. And as you guys can imagine, there's lots of brush fires in Malibu. You see them on the news all the time and stuff. And I'd be out there on these brush fires. The only problem is I had already started eating healthy and organic, and there's no healthy food on a brush fire because you're in a remote region and there's no stores around or anything like that. And you could be out there working 6, 8, 10 hours with no food other than what you bring in your pack. So I would bring energy bars, and I would always love to eat raw cashews. Oh, and sometimes the department would provide MREs, prison sack lunches, or even fast food, which none of those things really work for me. So I would snack on raw cashews. Instead of getting a lot of energy, I would get gassy and bloated, sometimes even constipated, have some brain fog. And that was all what I found out later when I did the research from eating, like a pound of cashews and the lectins inside them. So I found out about sprouting and lectins, and I started experimenting at home, sprouting nuts, and I noticed that my digestive symptoms went away, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So then I started dehydrating them, which preserved them naturally and brought back the crunch, because when they're wet and mushy, it's like not fun.
They would like have a little mold, and so they probably mold fast.
They get moldy fast, so then you have to put them in the refrigerator. Now you have this cold, mushy thing. Like, I did not want to put that in my mouth, so so the dehydration was key, and then I experimented with flavors. It was
like curry and cumin, all kinds of things, right?
The first one was sage and rosemary. When I was living in Topanga with Johan, we had sage and rosemary growing right outside the door, so I just dried that out, ground it up into powder, and put it on the nuts with some aminos, some liquid aminos, and it was like, wow, this is really good. So I would say for the first 6 or 9 months, I was just making that sage and rosemary flavor and giving it to all my friends and family, the guys at work. And next thing I know, every time I walk in the room, everyone sticks out their hand. Hey, you got any more of those nuts? And I would say within 9 months, I was making like 100 pounds of cashews and just giving them away every month. And they're organic, so it's like, $700 a month, $800 a month.
Oh,
and just giving it away. So I said, guys, you're going to have to start paying me for this. And the overwhelming response was like, okay, how much do you want? And so that's how Rich Nuts started.
I love that. And now you're at a much different place with this company. So and that's been how many years since now? Now we're in 2022, July 2022. And when did you, along the way, by the way, Rich has always been really interested in regenerative farming and plastics and understanding, the glyphosate Roundup damage. And you've just always been on this amazing discovery and finding things that, promote longevity, and the foundation training from Goodman you brought to me. And then, Rich even brought Wim Hof indirectly into our space, and we got to experience him in person, 12 years ago or something?
Hey, we can go again in January, 10 days in Poland.
I cringe when
I'm having a hard time rounding up a crew for that one. Right. There's only like 2 people that said yes.
I've seen the video of the Yes Theory. Those guys did a video of it, and I'm like,
It's real.
It looks like the most agonizing thing ever.
Yeah, it's intense.
So tell us just a little bit of, so you've been at Rich Nuts for how long? And where are you at now? What's some big news about the company? And just what is Rich Nuts about?
Yeah, so
were featured in Mark Hyman's newsletter a couple weeks ago. I saw that, of his favorite things.
Yes.
They're
Mark's
incredibly
picks.
delicious and they're incredibly nutritious. But tell us just about, where when you went from just doing it for the firemen to like, where is it at now?
Yep. So when I was first doing it at the fire department, and sometimes I would get recalled to work and I'd be there 5 days and I would actually make them there. It was really funny because I would come into the room where I was making them in the morning and a bunch of the nuts would be missing because the guys would eat them. They were like, what do you want from us? It smelled so good in here. Those things would taste amazing. So they were like stealing little snacks in the morning. So that's how it started, and I would make them at the house in Topanga. But when I wanted to see, like, people were like, you need to turn this into a business. This is amazing. And I was kind of like a little bit reluctant and vulnerable because for me, it was the first creative thing I'd ever put into the world. And I had this whole feeling around it like, oh my gosh, are people going to like it? Are they going to like me? And I got a little bit insecure. And so in 2017, we started the LLC. I pushed through my fears and I would start going out to farmers markets and I would sample. And it was so great going to farmers markets because I got all this interactivity with people. I could talk to them about what sprouting is, why it's better for you. And I learned how to talk about what I was doing and why it was so important. And once people put the product and ate it, they were like, wow, this is amazing. So the first part with going to the farmers market was crucial because basically I got to learn how to so first I knew all my friends loved it and they would pay for it, but like, are strangers gonna do it? Are strangers gonna buy it? Are strangers gonna like me? So I got to go through that journey, and what I found overwhelmingly was yes, people love it and they wanted to buy it. And so from those very humble beginnings in the farmers market in 2017, we've been growing ever since. And now we're at a place where we're ready to scale up. We just got into a national distributor, which is huge for the retail space. So we're super excited about that. A couple of amazing podcasters and biohackers that I really look up to, like Dr. Hyman and Tim Ferriss have recently put us in their newsletter. So those guys are discovering it. And it's like, here's the thing. If you want something that tastes great and is really good for you, that's what Rich Nuts is.
And it's in Whole Foods and Erewhon. It's all over the place, right?
We're not in Whole Foods yet, but we are talking with them. Okay. Whole Foods has changed, obviously, with the changed ownership. It's not necessarily the Whole Foods we all remember. Right. And so they are, looking at their nut category, and they have a lot of, if you go into Whole Foods now and look, you'll see a lot of the 365 brand. So we'll see what happens with Whole Foods. We're working on them. But we are available online, richnuts.com. You can buy anywhere. Amazon also. But yeah, this journey has been 10 times harder than being a fireman for me.
10 times harder?
Yeah.
Why?
Because being a firefighter was just like show up and be me naturally. It's like who I already was. Now I have to like stretch myself and expand who I am and like learn about food safety and managing. When I first started the business, I didn't even know what a spreadsheet was, let alone how to use one,
Yeah.
So.
And now you're on Zoom meetings and investors and like all that. It's just, but you have a beautiful partner to help you with that. Tell us about Samantha a little bit.
Samantha, I call her Divine Goddess Pele, and she is my beautiful redhead goddess, and she's amazing. So when I first met her, she was leading this camp at Burning Man, and I had only experienced like masculine leadership, especially like military style in the Navy and then with the fire department, where it's like do as you're told and no talking back kind of situation, top down management. And what I love to say about Samantha is she took the Bad News Bears and went to the Creative Olympics, which is Burning Man, and won gold because she got actually awards for how amazing the camp was. Yeah. And that was all about her ability to nourish the team. So she got the best out of like what I would consider, and this may be a little judgmental, B players, that weren't like the guys that were in the fire department, which are like, or Navy SEALs type, like super on point people. And she got them to excel. And how did she do that? She did that by nourishing them. Wow. And the fire department, I never felt nourished by my supervisors. They would just like, go do this, go do that, point at you and tell you what to do. Yeah. So totally different style of leadership, But that's how you get the best out of the team. So that's why she's the CEO now. I made her the CEO.
And you guys are just fully committed to making this, what's your plan for the nut company?
Well, my plan is to become a carbon sink. First, to become carbon neutral. That's our goal. And to have completely compostable packaging. And to make sure that we incorporate into our business model all the externalities, which legacy businesses didn't do. And now that's why we're kind of facing the climate situation we're in. So the huge step forward for me, it was like right as my fire department career was coming to an end, the nut business started opening up to me. So are you familiar with Kiss the Ground?
Hey, so many people have told me to see it. Is it good? Is it worth seeing? It's a documentary, right?
It's a documentary, it's a book, it's a movie. It's like a whole movement. And with Kiss the Ground, I read this white paper that they had in their program.
Hold on a sec. Mine stopped recording for some weird reason.
Uh-oh.
Just now, though. Ask me the kiss. Can you clap for me? Just hit your skin. Hip your... Yeah. Okay. Ask me the Kiss the Ground thing again.
Okay. Have you heard about Kiss the Ground?
No, I haven't. It's a documentary, right?
Yes, it's a documentary. It's a movement. It's a movie. There's a book, and there's a whole organization around it. And their whole thing is about rebuilding the soil health, because the soil health, this is all the regenerative agriculture stuff. So I read this white paper, and in the white paper it said that within 5 years, we could avert the entire climate crisis without any cuts if the entire world shifted over to a regenerative agriculture system. Because the regenerative agriculture system sequesters 3 to 5 times as much carbon per square acre. I'm sorry, I believe that's 3 to 7 times as much carbon per square acre as conventional agriculture. And on top of that, additionally, provides 30% more nutritious food. You want to be resistant to pandemics, to COVID, to illness, you need to have more nutrition in your food, so it's more nutrient dense. So I was like, wow, that's the first positive news I've heard ever on climate change. In 5 years, we could sequester enough carbon just by switching our agriculture system. Okay, so our second goal, become regenerative, fully regenerative. So we're working on that. That's not as easy to do because it's hard to find sources that are already regeneratively approved. And, everyone wants to see the metrics on that, prove to us that you're sequestering more carbon. So that's all happening now, and that system is getting in place. Yeah. And we're excited to be a part of that.
I love that. And then eventually, an exit strategy for you, or do you want to continue doing this, or have you thought about that next kind of chapter?
I think at some point we'll probably exit, but maybe I'll stay on as a spokesman, the ambassador, and keep representing the brand as long as that is moving forward.
Well, and you're a natural speaker. You were a Toastmaster, so you could be an ambassador easily for this. And maybe you'll transition into sort of what Zach Bush is doing too with Farmer's Footprint. Is you've always been so passionate about nature that it only seems natural that you would be a spokesperson in some way for Mother Earth and for the whole conversation around nurturing this home that we have.
Yeah.
That feeds us.
For sure. And that's a big part of my entire why. So are you familiar with Simon Sinek? And it starts with why. He wrote a book. He has a TED Talk.
Yeah.
So my why is because I believe that the children of this generation, like your son right here, and future generations, they deserve a better earth, a cleaner earth, and a more just earth. And what's moving the needle are the businesses. That's setting the tone for life and for the planet we live on. So that's why we have the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. It all comes from that why. So we want to positively impact the people in our business, the people we interact with, the farmers that grow our food, which nobody even thinks about, People think food comes from the store, but it actually comes from Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, when there was no food on the shelves, I wasn't really worried because I knew all the wild foods that grew around me, and I was like, I'll just eat that if there's no more food there at the store.
You're in Puerto Rico, just grab an iguana.
That's right. We started eating the iguanas. We're looking into making a coconut mango iguana curry. It's going to be delicious. And we'll be able to survive the next hurricane, and everyone else will be starving. Nature is abundant, and it's all around us. It's a free food frenzy.
All right, so now we are indoors, and we finished Johan's pyramid breath up on the roof with Austin strapped to my chest. And you were saying something that it was, with your dad just transitioning, and that it was special to be around father-son energy with Austin and I. Like, what did you mean by that? Like,
It just felt very nourishing to have that, to be kind of like on the inside with the two of you on the walk. And this whole morning, we spent the morning together. I was holding him for a while and just like feeling his sweet, curious, like state of wonderment. I don't know how to describe it. It was really beautiful. And to feel that energy, especially when I'm in this like portal or this super sensitive space, where I feel like I'm in a transition or initiation into a whole new way of being, which, continued evolution. The Tony Robbins thing, right? You taught me that, I believe. Constant and never-ending improvement.
Can I? Yeah.
And that's definitely my motto.
Is it?
Yeah. That's how, my life, even though the story has been challenging, has always been improving, has always been like going to new heights. And, with that, there's also lows, but it's really about what you do with that when it shows up and what you perceive it to be, right? So your perspective is key to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of my magic, is I look at things that in a different way, and I say like, look, either I have to go to work today or I get to go to work today, and there's a totally different energy of that. And if it's a have to and you can't change your perspective on it, then maybe you need to find a new career, So now I get to go to work. I get to pursue my dreams with this new business venture. And for the fire department, for a long time, it was a get to. But towards the end, when my body started breaking down, it was a have to, because I felt like it was a burden on my body, and I was breaking down, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So now I get to, create this amazing brand from scratch, which has been incredibly challenging and pushing all my edges and expansion. But I'm learning so much, and I'm constantly growing and being challenged, and I love that on some level, even though sometimes it becomes tiring.
Yeah, and you, speaking of tiring, you get up pretty early, don't you? I want you to share, if you could, just a few tools that you use daily, because your morning practice and there's some things that you do that I think that you've introduced to me, obviously, the Wim Hof breath, and then the foundation training, and we both do knees over toes. Knees over toes came to me through another friend, Nick Serrado. But then obviously there's different things that you do, like sun gazing. I just want to hear what your typical morning is like. And now you're living in Puerto Rico, right? And like, why are you in Puerto Rico?
Number one reason we're in Puerto Rico is a tropical island paradise. It's really incredibly beautiful and majestic. It reminds me a lot of Costa Rica or Hawaii. It's less developed, I would say, than both of those places, but that just lends to more nature, more beauty. There are tax benefits to being there, which is an added bonus, but it's like you get to live in a tropical island paradise. That's the main reason I'm there. We have coconuts growing all over. There's iguana everywhere. There's mangoes. It's really quite spectacular. We're near the beach. We're between the El Yunque rainforest and the beach. So one side is mountain view and the other side is ocean. It's pretty spectacular, actually.
I love that.
I hope to see you there soon.
I want to come visit. So you get up at what time? And tell me your typical routines here before work.
Yeah, my morning routine, and this just sets the tone for the day. So I wake up about 30 minutes before the sun comes up, and depending on the time of year and the location I'm in, that varies with the time, because that, the wobble of the earth and the seasons. So in the summertime here, the sunrise is very early. We're in Los Angeles, but in Puerto Rico, there's only a 30-minute variation, so that time changes. But 30 minutes before sunrise, I get dressed, and I used to go for a bike ride when I lived here, but now I'm doing a walk with my wife. We go up to this elevated spot where we have an excellent view of the horizon, and we basically do the sun gazing practice where we stare directly at the sun, and we do qigong while we do it. And as we breathe in, we inhale all the things we want in our life: love, gratitude, abundance, joy, success, wealth. And as we exhale, all the things that are no longer serving us: frustration, anger, I'm not good enough, whatever story we make up about ourselves. And you can do this for free twice a day. Everyone can do it. And the thing is, these are my words that I choose to use, but everyone should make it their own and really own that because it's true for you. So as I breathe in, I bring in the love, gratitude, abundance, joy up my body through my feet from the earth, which I stand on barefoot directly on the earth. I pull that energy and I just visualize it coming up into my heart and then out to the sun, all the things I want to, give up, anger, fear, frustration, I'm not enough. And I breathe that all out to the sun. I mean, it can take it. It's the largest massive fire in the sky. So throwing them into the ceremonial fire, and then from the sun, I get back love, gratitude, abundance, joy, and I just keep doing that in and out.
And sending then as you send down your feet into the earth, you're sending fear,
Anger, frustration,
resentment out back into the earth.
Yes.
So you're a conduit, and you're almost like cleansing it. You're using the grounding
Yes.
and then the light to cleanse. And
the conduit is the key. You become the conduit for those energies you want to see on the planet, and you manifest those frequencies here. That's like the intention behind it for me.
And just to be clear and safe, the eye gazing, there's actually there's a careful, very, very specific way to look at the sun directly without hurting your eyes. Can you just share that just for responsibilities?
Yeah. So I would call it sun gazing. Eye gazing is a little different. That's the
eye
person
gazing.
to person.
Or did I just say eye gazing?
Yeah.
Sun gazing.
So sun gazing.
We're eye gazing right now, ladies and gentlemen.
We are. It's quite spectacular. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. You're so sexy. The funny thing is with the sun gazing. So the first 30 minutes after sunrise, or the last 30 minutes before sunset is the time to do it. And that's because the sun is coming through so much atmosphere that it's actually safe to look at. So the recommendation is to start with 15 seconds, staring directly at the sun, doing maybe only one breath round in that time. And then the next day you add 15 seconds. So every time you do it consecutively, you add 15 seconds. I'm doing about, between 10 and 15 minutes now. I could be doing longer, but just for ease of schedule and flow, I could be up to a half hour, that whole first half hour, but usually 10 or 15 minutes feels really good for me. But the key is to introduce, 15 seconds at a time and not push it too far. And if your eyes ever start to hurt or it feels like it's too bright and you have to blink, then it's time to stop.
Okay.
So really listen to your intuition on that.
And what's so you do it to set your circadian rhythm
Yes.
clock internally, so then you barely use an alarm, right? You're tired then by 9:30, 10 at night, you're in bed.
Yeah, I'm usually getting in bed between 9 and 9:30 and then asleep by 10. Sometimes I read before I go to bed or something.
Like a paper book?
A paper book, yeah. Actual book.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we do with the walk, with the sun gazing. Oftentimes I'll do the haka afterward, which is the Maori warrior dance that we learned for my wedding.
That's wild. I wish I could find. I wonder if I could find a little video clip of that to throw in this.
We have the video.
Yeah, I'll
from
see if
Laurent.
I'll see if I can throw it up on my social media to to support this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, we have video of that. So
send me a little clip of that.
I do the haka, and then
Gambate.
Yeah.
Ora.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. This is a very masculine warrior practice, which feels good to me because I'm definitely a warrior. And so then we complete our walk. I do some basically Agoscu exercises, corrective exercises, which were similar to what we were doing today with knees over toes. Mm-hmm. And that's about
How did we learn about Agoscu? Because Tony Robbins,
I think, yeah.
Because I went to their clinic here, and we have, Kate and I have our courses that we teach.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people who have ankle problems or knee problems or shoulder, I say you can even just Google Pete Agoscu knees or Pete Agoscu shoulders, and there'll be a thing that if you did it every day consistently, in a month, you would probably solve that problem.
It's amazing, yeah.
He's a legend.
Yeah, and so that's about a 20-minute routine, and usually Samantha is out with me on the patio, and she's doing eye exercises while we listen to a book. We've been listening to... was it Neville Goddard? Yeah, we've been listening to Neville Goddard while we do that. We're in the same space. And then we do our breath work and meditation, which is another 45 minutes. So pyramid breath, Kriya, and then mantras.
Okay, so it's a 2-hour deal.
It's 3.
When you climb. Well, okay, no wonder you're going to get up at do it a half hour before sun.
Yeah, and then I take a cold shower.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, actually, it was a cold shower. Now I'm doing ice baths. I got my system set up, so...
You do?
I jump in the ice bath.
Minute?
I started the same thing, 15 seconds, and now I'm up to 1:45, 40-degree water. So it's real.
Do you have to break the ice?
No, actually, there's a way you can regulate it and set the temperature.
Is there a brand that you use?
I can share it with you. I think it's called Inkbird.
Okay.
I found it on Amazon. It just basically regulates.
Really?
Yeah, it's really easy. It's like $35. You put it in a freezer chest, and then you can turn that into an ice bath. It's pretty amazing. So my favorite part of the morning routine is the bulletproof coffee at the end. So I start all these things, and my least favorite part is the ice bath. Like, even though I know it's good for me and I've been doing it,
it's so hard.
It's not like right before you get in, you're like, you have to pump yourself up. I have to pump myself up. I can't speak for other people, but it's the hardest thing and my least favorite. So from James Clear's book, Habit Stacking, I learned like you set it all up so that your number one favorite thing, which is that creamy, delicious, bulletproof coffee, comes after you do your hardest thing. So you stack your habits in a way that once you do the ice bath, then you get your good things. So you build that reward system into it, which is super powerful.
I love that.
Atomic Habits. Did you read that one?
Yeah.
Great.
We've shared that with our amazing community as well.
Yeah.
And so then, do you fast till like a few hours after your creamy coffee, or do you have breakfast?
Yeah, no, I usually fast for a bit. We'll do that. We do the coffee. Samantha and I have coffee clutch, which is like our morning briefing, or what we used to call it the fire department lineup, where we just kind of, hey, this is what I'm doing today. I need your support in this. Can you help me with that? It's kind of our little check-in moment.
Yeah.
Because we started doing the walk actually silent until after the sun gazing.
Which is hard for you because you're chatty. And
I'm
you're
a chatty.
Also like, look at the birds. You're waving your hands. You're pounding your chest like monkey. Like I can imagine on all the hikes we've done together. Right?
There's no talking, but there are sometimes sign language. Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. And so then actually after the sun gazing and we start walking again, we do 3 gratitudes each.
Okay.
So that's our gratitude. So that's our morning routine, and it takes about 3.5 hours. But by 9 o'clock, I hit the ground. The tone is set for the day. I'm like in peak, state, right? And now the business that we're building comes from that, which is all intention, which is all self-care, which is all nourishment.
And you guys work together at home.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we work on different sides of the house, but yeah, we work in the same space. Like she likes to be out on the patio in the front, and I'm on the backside in my office, and I'm creating content and starting to do podcasts and like really starting to be the brand ambassador.
Yeah, so. What you're good at, what you're really good at.
Thank you.
I'm excited for this. Now, Samantha, I was in the kitchen with her, and she shared something about Gay Hendricks creating the love you want. There's a mirroring exercise.
Yeah.
And I just feel that'd be really helpful in relationships. So Gay Hendricks wrote a book that I shared with everybody that in our school called The Big Leap, right? And it talks about upper limit problems. And
self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah, and people's sabotage of how good they're willing to have it. They get to a certain point and then they blow their life up.
Yeah.
And Gay Hendricks has a really cool mechanism for the Big Leap. But he has another book that is incredible for couples called Getting the Love You Want. Now, can you just share in your relationship with Samantha how that mirroring exercise has been beneficial, or could you even explain what that is for people?
Yeah, so it's been super transformative. We actually went to Big Sur and took a course, Imago Therapy it's called. That's based on the book. And the course was at Big Sur. It was great. We actually had an amazing time, and we were like the first couple to share. We went up in front of the whole group, and they had us practice the mirroring technique, which is basically where you repeat exactly what the person says to you. So they're like, they want to express something to you and say, hey, can we do the mirroring? And whoever's more resourced when we get into like a little bit of a
more resource. Let's go on the floor. That chair's just squeaking like a donkey. Okay. And we'll just slide this down, and we'll just put this closer to your mouth, even a little bit if we can. Come a little closer.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. I'll come down with you. Yeah, that chair's just squeaking too much.
Sorry.
No, it's not you. It's me. It's not you. It's me. So what I'm hearing is the chair is squeaking. Do you want something to sit on?
No, I'm totally fine.
I'll just stretch. Sure? You stretch. You do the splits. So Rich is doing the splits. I'm sitting on a little tiny like air pocket thing. Okay. So the mirroring exercise, and this is really powerful for couples. The way that Samantha explained it to me was just profound. And can you share it?
Yeah, so basically one person will start and they'll say like a short, maybe 4-word, 5-word sentence, something nice and tight and easy for the other person to repeat back. So you just basically, when you went out with your friends last week and then the other person will repeat. When you went out with when I went out and you changed the pronouns.
Yeah.
So when I went out with my friends last week, I was upset because you didn't tell me. Then you respond back. You were upset because I didn't tell you. And so what it does, and sometimes you'll get into some really heavy material where you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I meant, or that's not my intention. And your mind pops up and you want to respond, but you don't respond. You let them be heard. And in the slowing down and the listening, you really like start to hear what they're saying, and then they feel fully received and fully heard. And you're not like putting your protests up or arguing back or like creating a story or getting defensive, because you have to be present to listen to them and to reflect that back. So even though sometimes internally like you'd be like, well, that's not how I want it, or that's not my intention, or that's whatever story or excuse you're creating inside, and you don't express that, and you just let them feel fully heard. And it's really powerful. We've been doing it, and for me as a man, it really helps me to see my blind spots and to see them in a way from someone that I know loves me and that only wants the best for me and like wants me to grow and change and be the best version of me possible. So I can really hear it from her, especially in this way where it's not like, hey, you did this, and it's not accusational. It's not like that kind of thing.
I like that. It's almost like another level, another maybe tool in the conscious communication of like a part of me feels, or the story I'm making up, or, you know, from my perspective, this is almost like something you can actually do that it's an action that you're like, and you forced to be in their shoes because you're changing the pronoun. And interesting.
Yeah.
I need to read that book, and I actually would love to take his teacher's training, because Gay Hendricks,
Amazing.
I honestly think he's so unknown and I want to have him on my podcast just because like more people need to know about this dude, man.
Yeah.
That big leap, like the technique of even the language around, you have a thermostat of how good you're willing to have it.
Yeah.
And once you reach that, you blow that up with your limiting beliefs. And even putting words like that together, some people will break free because they're like, I do that. I sabotage my life when things are good.
Yeah. You don't think that you deserve better, and that's a construct that you live with, and it's oftentimes running subconsciously, but it creates your reality. And until you change that, you're going to have the same reality.
That's right.
So
I really love that. And so when you're looking at the sun and you're gazing, so you do it in the morning. Do you do that in the evening too?
you can also do it in the evening. I don't always, but sometimes.
Okay.
We usually go for another walk after dinner, and we'll do it then.
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds like how long's the walk? Like half hour?
30 minutes to an hour. It depends on how we're feeling and what time we're walking. We like to do it right at sunset. There's a bunch of pelicans that live in the estuary next to us, so they always go out and feed in the evening. In the morning, they're just like dive bombing into the water.
Cool.
They look like darts as they so that's really fun. And we watch the sunset on the other side. So like one side, sunrise, and the other side sunset.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so when you would speak with your dad, and you and I were on the roof and we watched the sun go behind the Santa Monica Mountains there, and we're like, oh, we'll see you tomorrow, son. Like the sun's going down, we'll see the sun tomorrow. And then you were sharing with me that no matter how your conversation went with your dad, even if there was a little bit of contention or a fight, he would still say, I loved you. And then what would he say?
Yeah, he would always say, see you tomorrow, son.
Yeah,
I love you. And he said that to everyone, see you tomorrow.
really?
Even though he wasn't going to see you tomorrow, or he wasn't planning to, it would throw people off. They'd be like, what? You'll see you tomorrow?
They're like,
are you coming over again? No. But it was just his way of saying goodbye. He would say, see you tomorrow. And it was really touching when you said, see you tomorrow, son. And you were talking to the actual son. And my dad used to say that to me. So that was a really special moment, for sure.
I love that. What's the biggest thing you've learned from your dad?
The biggest takeaway, the biggest thing I learned from my relationship with my father is that you get to choose your life. You get to be anything you want to be, and you can choose to be anything you want to be. And he really imparted that on me, and I believed it. And that's why I haven't been a victim of my circumstances, and I've continued to grow and expand and make the choices that create the life I want. And so I've just been, leaning into that ever since. as long as I can remember, you know? And nothing has ever been hard or given to me, but it's been such a joy and pleasure to live this life. I feel like it was a charmed life. Other people look at it and go, wow, that was a really hard life. I'm like, not for me. It was just amazing on all levels. So.
Wow. Oh yeah, you're inside of your life. Even though someone looking at it from the outside, they look like that might be hard, but you're inside it, pulling from it like the gold. And that's such a powerful thing to remember. I mean, it's easy for us to complain when things are a little off, but it seems like adversity has really made you who you are too. And we were talking just before we recorded too, is like somebody who has the perfect childhood has their own struggles, which is like to develop grit and to develop gratitude and to develop these tools that you actually get when you're coming from a
challenging situation.
Challenging sort of situation. So Johan said something last night, who's our friend and mutual friend. He's a brother. The three of us are definitely brothers. He was sharing that some of the mystics believe that this life is the dream. And when we pass away or transition on, we wake up.
Yeah.
And when you're born, you enter the dream. So it's like, I love that perspective. And then there's certain traditions around the world that spend their life preparing for the transition at the end in a way that's exciting, not a way. And I feel like this culture, the Western cultures, are trying to do everything to avoid it. To avoid,
That's why there's so much fear around it.
And that's why there's fear. And if anything, that, from you've handled this with your dad, this is very fresh. It's only been a few days.
Yeah.
And I feel honored to be in this space with you. And, I have also lost my dad. And even though it's 9 years ago, it feels like 9 days sometimes. Like it's sort of, this is going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
That your dad is, you can't hear his voice on the phone anymore like you could. But you'll hear his voice in little things that like you say to Samantha. You'll be like, oh my gosh, that's what my dad would say.
Yeah, some good, some bad.
And I save all my mom's voicemails. Like I have a Dropbox folder of probably 50 of my mom's voicemails for someday when my mom's not around. I can kind of go back and just be like, here.
Oh, that's sweet.
There's a little trick on your iPhone that you can just send the voicemail directly to your Dropbox, which is, if you have any on there, if your dad, I'll show you how to do it.
Yeah, that was the thing too, is it's so amazing how the universe works. So like last night we were here and I was feeling a little, right around sunset, a little bit alone in the world because my grandmother, my birth mother had passed a long time ago, and my grandmother died 5 years ago, and she was essentially my mother figure in life. And then now that my father passed and I don't have any children, I was feeling really alone in the world in a way. Even though I know intellectually I have a beautiful community, I have an amazing wife, and I have these really deep and powerful relationships, I was still feeling, part of me was feeling alone. And then everyone started showing up for the little gathering we had yesterday, and I was just surrounded by this love, cuddle, puddle of amazing friends. And so it's like as soon as you start feeling that, the universe responded with, you're not alone. Here's all these amazing people that love you, that see you. And the way I'm loved by our community, by you, by Johan, by Paul, by everyone that was there last night is so deep and profound and powerful, and I really feel it, Whereas my father's love was always unconditional, but it came with a lot of baggage and a lot of trauma that he had inflicted and chose not to deal with, or the patterns he kept repeating. So it was like a tainted love, even though it was unconditional. And then to have the pure love that I get from my community and from my group and from my wife, it's just a totally different experience, but super powerful and very nourishing. Yeah.
Well, I love you, brother, and I thank you for sharing that this special time with Kate and Austin, and for your being here in our home. If people wanted to connect with you and follow your journey, because you're also a storyteller, you're telling a bit of the hunter-gatherer story, because you're a hunter. We didn't get much into that, but you've one thing about Rich that I really love and respect, and I'd love you to actually share how you bless a meal which is really special to me, is your connection. You know, some people look at a hunter as a violent person, but when you think about how people get their meats from the grocery store, it's so disconnected that they just don't want to look at all the other stuff. Whereas I actually find what you do very brave. Like, you will hunt with a bow and arrow, and then you will carry that animal miles and miles and hurt yourself and skin it and eat the heart out in the woods, and like you're a total nutter. Like, you're doing it for real, where I feel like the steroid king or the liver king guy is doing it for show. Like, you actually do this stuff. And
The steroid.
Every time I look at him, I'm just like, oh man, I have his supplements, those ancestral supplements. I hope you didn't put steroids in them. But Rich hunts, and now he brought iguana with him from Puerto Rico. It's in my fridge right now, because they're overrunning the island of Puerto Rico, and they're free. There's you've had to.
It's a nuisance. Yeah,
it's a nuisance, and it's like decimating the
bird population
and the plants, right?
And the plants, yeah. Mm-hmm. And they have no natural predators. It's not their natural environment, so.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can always count on you to have elk, to have like wild boar, to have, and that connection to the land. And then whenever we sit down to have food together, I'd love for you to share just how you bless the food. Could you do that for us? Could you share your blessing?
I definitely can. Love and gratitude for this delicious meal we're about to receive. We're so grateful for all the plants and animals on our plate. We're thankful for their life force. We're thankful for everything it took to get here. The millions of years of evolution, the fossil fuels even, the people power, the water, the mineral, the sunshine, all the billions of microbes and nutrients in the earth. May it bless our mind, our body, and our soul. Aho.
Yeah, I just love that. You can like bless the fossil fuels, the trucks that are driving. Like, I just love, and we're like, I can't stand the fossil fuel companies, but then you're like, well, they brought you your vegetables too.
Yeah.
So there's like finding gratitude for the whole picture.
If you want to make a change, you have to first acknowledge it. If you don't even want to acknowledge it, how are you going to ever change it? And that's the thing about the hunting part, right? It's like, people go to the store and they buy meat in a package and they don't even think about the animal, or that it was an animal, or there was a life attached to it. When I go and I hunt and I kill with intention, I see that life. I take that life with choice, and it's empowering. It's powerful, as opposed to these animals that eat the wrong food, live in horrible conditions their whole life. It's
and then they're wrapped in petroleum, and that all those BPAs, all those things from that plastic is sitting on there for weeks, and then it goes into our bodies.
Yeah, and then we're wondering why cancer is through the roof. I mean, all the plastics, the animals are eating the wrong food, so they have all these issues. But when you hunt an elk, it's a wild animal that lived its natural, clean, pure life, and then hopefully it happens really quick.
Yeah.
And that's the ideal, and usually it is pretty quick, and that's so much better than living your life in a feed lot covered in poop, eating the wrong food.
Yeah, it's all about perspective, right? We see somebody who shows this animal that they killed, and we're like, how barbaric of them.
Yeah.
Especially if they show it on social media, like everyone's outraged. But then when you really think about it, and that I've been one, if I see somebody with like, a big animal on their truck, I kind of cringe a little bit. But then when you think about it closely, that animal lived its whole life in nature, and then split seconds of maybe some pain at the very end. Yeah. Whereas those other ones, think about the emotional trauma, the stress, and like the sickness and and just the mental, like these are anguish and the stress, and then we're eating all that stress. So everything is about having the openness to look at things from a little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. People go, oh, you're a killer. And I'm like, well, you know what? Do you feel bad about that? And I'm like, does a lion feel bad about eating? I mean, and plants, by the way, are alive too. So you got to eat something, otherwise you don't live. So, and plants, they have scientific experience where they prove that they feel things. And
and plants grow in blood bone, and they plants are growing in animal products, like to grow. Like they need, what's in the earth is minerals from animals.
Yeah,
So-
and it's a cycle, right? And the animals eat them, and they poop it out, and that builds up the nutrition in the land. So, like,
Yeah.
with the elk, with doing it with intention, and I did eat a big chunk of the first elk that I killed. I ate like a big piece of the heart, and I always bring back the heart and the organs, and we use that too because that's where all the nutrients are.
And your wife's an amazing chef. She knows how to make everything delicious.
Yeah. And we had a bear actually get to an elk before we did. One of the guys in my hunting party one year, and the first thing it ate were all the organs. So it cleaned out it actually saved us because the elk wandered off miles, and we had to go get permission to go on this private land to track it. And by the time we got back, a bear had eaten about 3/4 or half of the elk.
And you could still salvage some of the meat, though?
Oh yeah, we drug it out of there.
You're not worried about bacteria from the bear's mouth or any of that?
No, we took it to the meat processor,
Okay,
and we
got it.
wanted to have him check it out. And he said
He's like, pretty good.
if the bear hadn't eaten the organs and the guts, then it would have spoiled. But luckily it did. That was the first thing it ate: the heart, the liver, all the organs, all the entrails. That's where the nutrition is.
That's right. Wow. Well, I want to wrap this up, and I just want people to be able to follow you. So it's Rich Nuts or Rich's Nuts?
On Instagram, we're rich.nuts.
Rich.nuts.
Our website is richnuts.com.
Richnuts.com. Okay.
Richnuts.com. And if you want to follow me personally, it's rich_PW.
PW.
For
Great.
Peace Warrior.
Peace. Oh, right.
And that's where I'm starting to tell more about my story and about my practices and share a lot of the wisdom that I have.
You have a lot, brother, and I feel like you're just beginning to, in some ways, and all these beautiful practices that, ARP wave, where I go to see JR and the people that follow me, I've filmed myself there many times. There's so many of these, and you use that regularly, and your wife too.
You brought that into my life. I thank you for that.
and
That healed my knee.
Right. There's just all these beautiful things that's what I like to share in some of these conversations with my friends and also people I look up to. And I told you I'm having Zach Bush on next month. I like to gain these perspectives because he's plant-based, right?
Yeah.
And your friend was over here, Jose, and he's like, only eats meat and fruit. It's like, what's the right way? There isn't.
Yeah.
I feel the right way is be present
Yeah.
and be grateful and in the moment of what you're doing and have actually be present enough to be connected to what you're doing in this way.
Do it with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then feel, does this feel good? Does this make me feel more energetic? And if not, then don't eat it.
Yeah.
Or don't do it.
Exactly.
But so I love you, brother, and just bless your father on his journey and this greatest journey. Perhaps waking up from this dream, and you are not alone. You have, we have the wisdom of your father and my father, and we have my son to teach us backwards, which I find I learn so much from my son. And we have each other. There's father energy that from me to you. There's father energy coming from Johan to you, and everywhere you look. So you are surrounded with love, and I really feel like people will be inspired of this. It's such a graceful. You've handled this with grace and ease, but also with I've seen you processing on the roof. You're doing dancing. You're moving. You're really honoring this moment of your father's transition. So I love you, brother.
Thank you. It feels really powerful for me. I'm definitely in a transition portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very opportune time. It's challenging, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And thanks for being willing to share during this vulnerable time. So
Thank you for having me.
you got it, buddy.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Bye-bye.
Ask me about my nuts. That's what his t-shirt said this morning. All right. See ya. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. A very unique kind of situation, but please share this if you liked it, like and review and subscribe and all that fun stuff if you could. It makes a big difference. And please check out my sponsors in the show notes. And if you use some of those links, please put in my code. It actually helps pay for things and helps support this podcast and other endeavors. And I only use and share with you companies that I love. So I hope you get a good kick out of them and some good quality use out of some of these companies. They're amazing. And please, while you're here, check out some of my other podcasts. I hope you enjoy listening to them. And I will catch you on the next one. Until I see you, please be kind and gentle and tender and loving towards yourself in your thoughts on purpose. And please enjoy yourself. Inside my mind, my thoughts are unkind. I'm lost and I'm blinded by desire. But just like old times, I'll walk the line.